Messenger, St. Louis Post-Dispatch columnist and contributor here at the Big 550 KTRS every Tuesday and Thursday from a secured bunker. Good morning, Tony Messenger. Tony Messenger will try and get the ice off of the line here for you. Tony, you there?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
There he is.
Good morning, Tony. So we've been talking this morning. Had Kurt Erickson on, Post-Dispatch reporter, one of your colleagues, talking about the cuts that Governor Greitens has made, the $146 million on top of the $200 million that Governor Nixon made, on top of the $600 or $700 million more he's thinking about making. That's $1 billion in spending that the state has to cut. How did they get it so wrong?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, this is a problem 20 years in the making. This is a problem somewhat related to the Hancock Amendment passed in 1981, which is supposed to limit the amount of revenue growth in the state. The problem is the combination of the Hancock Amendment and our lawmakers, including former Governor Jay Nixon, their aversion to raising taxes or producing revenue. Missouri is now $4 billion behind the revenue limit that would have been allowed under Hancock Amendment, which means that our tax burden as Missourians is $4 billion below what Hancock set the limit at, and that was 1981 tax limits. So this is a problem decades in the making because we've decided as a state that we no longer believe that a balanced budget has two sides of the equation. All we care about is spending. We're no longer going to deal with revenue. Revenue doesn't exist. We're not allowed to raise revenue. It's evil. It's not actually part of the mathematical equation. So this is a long-term problem. Governor Nixon didn't create this problem. The Missouri legislature last year didn't create this problem. A series of political failures have created this problem.
Well, I don't.
But specifically this year, last year's legislature has to carry most of the burden because Governor Nixon told them, you are passing too many special tax credit breaks. You are giving too much money to corporations, etc. This budget is going to be out of balance. He told them that. They thought, you're a Democrat, you're lying to us, so now their new Republican governor has to pay the political price.
Okay.
And the very first thing he has to do is cut a whole lot of money out of schools.
So there's no clearly they're not going to raise taxes. So I can't imagine they would do that. So they got to find $700 billion more dollars out of this budget. Tony Messenger, that's going to cut deep, and that's going to cut into somebody somewhere along the line.
It's going to cut into poor people. It's going to cut into poor people. They're going to cut health care. They're going to cut education. They're going to cut schools. They're going to cut higher ed. People in the middle class who have kids in college, your tuition's going to go up. It's probably going to skyrocket in the next couple of years because that's one of the only places where they have discretionary control of the budget. Now, if they're smart, they go back to an idea that Republican Senator Matt Bartle several years ago was proposing. They need to close a prison. You want to come up with hundreds of millions of dollars, you've got to change the way we deal with crime and punishment in this state. And that means we have to let a lot of nonviolent offenders out of prison. We have to close an entire prison if we're going to come to actual savings. They're going to have to get very creative and very serious if they're only going to cut money and not ever deal with actually raising revenue.
If they close all the tax credit loopholes, does that actually is that actual hard dollars, or is that money already spent that they can't get their hands on, in other words?
A lot of that money is already spent because of the way the tax credit programs work.
Right.
But if they started this legislative session in capping and cutting back in some tax credit programs, there is about $600 million a year that the state spends on various tax credits that mostly goes to developers and corporations trying to reduce their tax burden. if they start working on cutting those back now over a period of a decade or so, there's around $600 million that they can recollect.
But those are the people who are paying the lobbyists to sweet talk them into giving them the tax breaks in the first place. So I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Right.
I don't think they're going to do it any seriously. I just don't.
So we find ourselves in a very interesting place. What do you make of him? There's some people who are critical of him not doing it now and putting it off for a couple of weeks or months.
Well, I mean, I'm on my way right now to Jeff City because I want to listen to the state of the state, and I'm disappointed that he's not doing what every previous governor in my lifetime has done, and that is you present the budget with your state of the state. And the reason that's important is the state of the state speech can be a whole lot of platitudes, but they're meaningless if they don't connect to what you're actually going to do with the budget. What the governor and the legislature does with the budget is the most meaningful thing they do, because setting budgets, Governor Nixon used to say budgets are about priorities. And so you can say tonight, the governor's going to say tonight what his priorities are. And some of those things, like ethics reform, for instance, he can accomplish outside of the budget process. But most of his other priorities involve something related to the budget. And so not presenting the budget tonight, I think, is a way for him to try to get a clean headline that says, I'm the ethics governor, I'm the right to work governor. That's what he's going to talk about tonight. The problem is that becomes a little bit less meaningful when 2 weeks from now he presents a budget that has to cut millions and millions of dollars from schools, from public safety, from roads, from higher education. That's where the rubber hits the road. And I think that's why he's doing it. I think he's doing it that way because he knows that if he presents a budget today, that's the story, and it's not a good headline.
If you've got to cut $600 million more out of this budget, I know there are a lot of people who want to try and somehow get some type of funding available for roads. I don't necessarily see that happening if you got to cut $700 million out of a budget.
If our state lawmakers are not going to be serious about investing in roads, there are only two options. One of them I proposed in an editorial a couple of years ago. Missouri has 30,000 miles of roads that the state's responsible for. It's far too large. It's because of a deal made back in the 50s to pass a tax. Thousands of those miles of roads, somewhere between 10 and 20,000 of them, should be given back to the counties so the counties can be responsible for them. There is a proposal, Senator Ryan Silvey made it last year, never even got a hearing, to do that, to put before voters the process that would reverse that which they did back in the 50s. That would be step one. Step two is, if you're going to actually try to rebuild 70 and maybe rebuild 44, you've got to consider toll roads. That again becomes a constitutional amendment process. Those are the two things that they can do seriously to deal with transportation outside of raising revenue. Other than that, it's all lip service.
Right, but a toll road is raising revenue. It's just a tax. It's a different way of tax.
It's a tax. It's a backdoor tax. And look, they can say they're not raising taxes all they want. When the University of Missouri raises tuition next year, they have raised middle-class taxes, period, end of story.
Tony, drive safe, and we'll talk to you on Thursday.
Will do. Talk to you later.
Tony Messenger, St. Louis Post-Dispatch columnist and contributor to the Big 550 KTRS every Tuesday and Thursday. It's 8:28.